do you know about Agatha Harkness?
Oh, come on, man!
Who is Agatha Harkness?
She's an ancient freaking witch who will F your shit up, all right?
What?
It's witch repellent. You fools. I'm out of here. Amateur hour.
Wait, Mr. Bonerific! I just want to talk!
Hello, welcome back to House of R. I'm Joanna Robinson, and I encourage you all to pitch a tent, throw some potatoes in the air fryer, because Mallory Rubin is here with me to talk about Agatha All Along, episode 6. Hey, Mal, how you doing?
You must be Bonerific 69.
That's Mr. Bonerific to you. Please respect me. Okay, hello. We're here to talk about, Mallory and I have not pre-gamed about this episode, but I am going to say a phenomenal fucking episode of television. That is what we're here to talk about today, and we're thrilled to do so. Before we do so, programming reminders.
Mm-hmm.
The Midnight Boys, pew pew, are covering Agatha and Penguin sort of smooshed together in an extravaganza of an episode for you that you'll want to pay attention to. Next week, we're like ever so slightly light on the programming. You might hear other Ringer folks talk about this thing called Core Week. We're all going to LA. It's a whole thing. So we're going to be a little lighter, but we will be back to talk about Agatha. The Midnight Boys will be giving you their instant reaction to Venom 3, and then Mallory and I will also be covering Venom 3 on a deep dive, because
genuinely cannot wait.
if anything deserves a deep dive, I think it's Venom 3. So that is something that we're going to. I'm actually genuinely thrilled. We're all supposed to go watch it together next week.
I know.
As a team.
Wonderful.
So
yeah.
it's gonna be really fun. So that's a few things going on. It's not as swamped as it is sometimes, but how can folks keep track of all of that, Mallory? How can they make sure they don't miss a single Venom take?
You don't want to miss a Venom take. Who knows? Maybe there'll be like some photos of the gang hanging out. If I get Joanna to watch a Ravens game, we'll see. What happens.
Will I meet Halo? That's a big question.
Ooh. Standing invite, as I always like to say. How can people follow along? Thanks for asking. Here's what I would recommend. First, follow the pod. Follow the House of R on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us. Give us those 5 stars. Then head over to the YouTube channel, Ringerverse YouTube channel. Hit subscribe. Full episodes of House of R, Midnight Boys, Pew Pew, available for your viewing pleasure on both the YouTube channel and Spotify. Then, while you're at it, your phone's in your hand. Follow the Ringerverse on the social media platform of your choosing. TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. And then you're like, I don't want to put my phone down yet.
No.
I'm not ready to close my computer.
No, I have an addiction.
Send us an email.
Oh, yeah.
hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. We have somehow, shockingly, dismayingly, only 3 episodes, 2 weeks.
2 more weeks of Agatha.
Of Agatha left, because it's a double finale. Episodes 8 and 9 will air on the same week, Halloween week. So get the Agatha theories, thoughts, emails in while you can. Because our time on the road is limited.
Did you have a bar or bat mitzvah? We'd love to hear from you. In fact, we did.
What was your theme? Yeah, what was your theme?
Was
My
it
theme was Jell-O, as I have told you before.
Yes, we've discussed this before, which is why I'm not shocked. I already went through that trial and tribulation with you. Okay, so hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. Please do send us your thoughts, your theories, and we will get into it all. Let's go now. Spoiler warning first. Spoiler.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Through episode 6 of Agatha All Along, and anything that happened in WandaVision, and anything that happened in the MCU at large, including Multiverse of Madness that's on the table today. And
your favorite, yeah.
Comics canon, we have some thoughts. We'll be talking about it. So that is what is up today on this podcast. Let's go now to the opening snapshot.
You really used your back to you in the studio voice for that? Let's go now to the opening snapshot.
And then
today's sports report.
Then Tiffany with the weather. Okay. We're talking about episode 6, Familiar, by Thy Side.
Yeah.
Written by Jason Rostovsky, who actually doesn't have a ton of writing credits under his name. And then directed by, she's a beautiful Brazilian name. I'm going to try not to mess it up. It's Ganja Monteiro. Great name. great episode of television. This is a long boy. Last week
Yep.
was a shorty.
Yep.
This is over 40 minutes once you take away the previously on and the credits and all that sort of stuff like that. So this is a meaty episode full of a lot of information, a lot of lore download, a lot of Easter eggs, a lot of theory fodder. We're going to get into all of that. But before we do, Rubin, did you enjoy this episode of television?
So we talk a lot on the pod, really regardless of what we're covering. There are a few things we look for, right? We love a character on an arc. We talk about this a lot.
Conflict in the human heart?
Conflict in the human heart is the only thing worth writing about.
Yeah.
Every now and then, in discussing these things, some hyperbole might enter the chat. There might be a moment where someone, could be either of us.
Could be literally anyone on this call.
Either of us
Could
says.
be Steve, possibly.
Could be. This is the most important thing that's ever happened in the history of television.
Right.
Unfortunately, we will now have to retire that phrase because officially, forever, the most important thing in the history of television.
Yeah.
And the most important installment in We Love a Character on an Arc is the return of Ralph Bohner. And I will honestly not hear any argument to the contrary. I won't. This was
the way they bonered us again, but we were so excited this time.
Yes, this was, obviously there's a lot of other stuff that happens in the episode, all of which I also really enjoyed and I'm genuinely very excited to talk about. I thought this was great, top to bottom, really great. It's smart, it's confident, it's assured, it's funny, it's poignant, it's everything. Ralph Bohner, to me though, the return of Ralph Bohner it tells us everything about the sure hands guiding the story. Because something like the Ralph Bohner saga and scandal swept the viewing public during the WandaVision days could be the kind of thing, and we've talked about this again, in other fictional universes, where you get scared. You lose the courage to do the thing you want to do because maybe people didn't like it or it didn't go the way that you thought it was going to go. And this is it's two things in tandem. One, it's a thing that, you have made this point many times in other Marvel conversations over the years. And I think it's a great one to keep noting, the Feigeism, right? It's
the Feige fix it. Yeah.
Yes. If something didn't work, you don't have to abandon it. Lean in, figure out how to improve and tweak, and then make it work.
Yeah.
But also, this was still a joke. And the essence and core of what Ralph Bohner was in the first place was actually preserved, intact, and amplified.
Yeah.
And Jack Schaefer and the team making Agatha All Along have the confidence in the thing that they are doing.
Yeah.
And know that it is good. And that is a wonderful thing as a viewer, to know that you are marching towards something. Even this is a really small example, but seeing a moment as crucial as the car crash, right? Which obviously we're going to discuss. We get a look again at the anomaly, at the hex. When Billy is showing Eddie the hex and they're talking about the anomaly. He's like, oh, well, this is look, it's a rune, witchcraft. And after Ralph Bohner, one of the things that people complain, and of course, let's be clear, people loved WandaVision, but one of the things that people complained about the most was, God, at the end, at the finale, and the final moments, we still had to do big battle in the sky. We still had to CGI it up and splash runes all over the place in a big red box. And that was resurfaced so that a character could understand his own identity.
Yeah.
That's just brilliant. I loved that. So I thought this was great. I'm honestly crestfallen that it's almost over. I just don't want it to end, but I also am kind of you feel that the 9-episode length here was right. We often talk about, is it too short? Is it too long? I feel we are marching methodically.
Wait, is that how you talk about Ralph Bohner or something
exactly
else? Okay.
Exactly. When you were saying it's a meaty one, I'm well, this was
we had double boners.
I
don't know what to tell
I would
you.
hope it's a meaty one. My goodness. But yeah, I just thought this was great. I'm so excited to talk about it with you today. It has also just inspired. You are in general one of the you're one of the lords of Theory Corner, across the podcasting universe. But this episode of television inspired you to 8 pages of bullet points in a Google Doc about something that I am just like, I just actually cannot wait for you to talk about. So this is just exciting. What fun.
Yeah, Mallory's still going to regret over note-taking duties to me.
No.
Why were the notes late today? I don't know. Joanna rewatched the entire show. Okay, so listen, I thought this was an extraordinary episode of television. This is the best the show has been since the opening of this season. WandaVision was my favorite Marvel show. This is my second favorite Marvel show, with so much love for Loki. But I think that Jack Schaefer
so that means Secret Invasion moved down to 4.
But Jack Schaefer and Mary Lavanos, who's like the consulting producer on this, that's not her official title, exec producer, I'm sure, on this show, those are like, and we didn't know how much of WandaVision was Jack Schaefer and how much was Matt Shakman, because that was like a head writer, director of the whole series, co-production. But I have to say that I feel like, with love for Matt's work, the spine of WandaVision is still here in Agatha All Along. And so that has to come from Jack. And Jack is the storyteller I am most excited by in the Marvel storytelling universe right now. I am just like really thrilled by what she's doing with comics lore, taking comics lore, complicated comics lore. The soul of one kid wound up in the body of another kid, simplifying it, refining it, making it less weird. We don't have to say the word shard of a soul or anything like that. And putting it inside of an episode of television that is both incredibly sad, especially when you rewatch it and you watch like 13-year-old William Kaplan like being hoisted aloft on the chair at his bar mitzvah. Like it's tremendously sad and like side-splittingly funny. The bonering in this episode is just
it's historic.
I want to let you know that originally the opening quote I picked for this episode was an Agatha Billy conversation, which we'll hear later. But I was like,
come on,
I need to give Mallory her dose of boner right at the top of the episode. I did that for you.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you. Thanks.
I do have some bad news for the Mephisto truthers. Okay.
Yeah.
Speaking of, like, the shot of Ralph Boner from behind in the bucket hat and the trench coat made its way into the latest trailer that they put out right before this episode. And people were screen grabbing it and they were like, Mephisto? And I just can't believe they got bonered again. I just like, it just actually brings me entirely so much joy. As for the Mephisto truthers out there, I regret to inform you that now all of the title cards in the closing credits have been filled out. We had a couple blank spaces, and now we know that those blank spaces were reserved for Evan Peters, Maria Dizia, Paul Adelstein, and Miles Gutierrez Riley, who were playing Ralph Boner, the Kaplans, Rebecca and Jeff Legends, and Eddie. So that's what we were waiting for. So I don't think we're going to see Sacha Baron Cohen as Mephisto or Elizabeth Olsen returning or something like that. I would just like tuck those hopes and dreams into bed and say goodnight, Tommy. We'll see you. We'll see you in another show.
Man.
Yeah. Anything else you want to say in this sort of table setting manner?
I don't think so. Let's dive in.
Let's go now to the deep dive. So, I've compiled a dossier, aka the Billy All Along theory. Usually in these deep dives, we go beat by beat through an episode. We are going to do that. But first, I just wanted to talk about this like very irresistible theory that is like percolating in our emails, percolating on Reddit, and percolating in my brain. I don't know why I said that way multiple times. We're not going to skip the magical mitzvah of William Kaplan. That is an event that we must pay due respect to. I'm very excited about it. But something that we've been talking about from the beginning, just given the way that the portal to this world opened up in the first place is the question of like, are we actually on the witch's road, or are we somewhere else? I thought maybe hell. I don't think that anymore. But the question that this episode inspires is, are we stuck in another Maximovian hex powered by Billy's love of pop culture, his fascination with Wicca, his need to connect with Tommy? And again, this is stuff from Reddit, stuff from our listener emails, stuff from my theory brain as I rewatched the episode sort of with this idea in mind. Just from the top, before I get into any specifics, Mallory.
Yeah.
We know that there's this idea that like the road changes for the coven. That has been an excuse for like sort of the shape that some of the things have taken. But after seeing the items in Billy's room, which we're about to go over, how are you feeling about this idea that this is this the road or is this not the road? How much is Billy shaping the story we're watching? What are your initial feelings here?
I think that the return of Ralph Boner in this episode, in addition to being just a pure pleasure and delight, is a good reminder for me, for viewers, to do what you always like to say, which is hold a theory loosely, right? In general.
Yes.
Just like, not that it was, actually part of what I loved about it was not there in a scolding way, right? But like, hold a theory loosely.
Yeah.
Necessary caveat issued. I would now like to say, I feel as close to 100% that this is the case as like I have with anything in a long time.
Okay.
It just feels like the supporting evidence is, and you're going to outline this in a way that I think will be very, very, very convincing and helpful. That said, it's confirmation bias because I'm like, this feels like what's happening, right? So
feels right.
Right. The part of it, I'm compelled by a number of the things that you're going to run through. A couple of the ones that are like just a kind of categories, buckets of things that you're going to hit that are most compelling to me, though. Like, if we, we'll hit some of this as we go. Like, if we return to the conversations between Agatha and Wanda from WandaVision, the way that Agatha discussed what Wanda had created, I feel like that really helps explain her curiosity about what's happening here and like her interest in Billy. Though obviously their relationship, as we are reminded in this episode, traces further. But the idea of like two pop culture obsessed, I kind of can't get past the thing about the tell in this episode. You have the same tell as your mom. And it's like the idea of magical beings manifesting this illusion and this reality to work through their own sense of loss and desire to and desperation to find someone they're close to again. Not just a manufactured illusion that brings people they have come across together, but through the frameworks of some sort of pop culture experience. That's kind of like the biggest bucket. But the other one to me that I just like sort of can't shake is this explains every episode basically so far has had a line or two where we were like, what's that about?
What was that?
And in a way that like, because again, the show is so deft and well-paced and precise and intentional. Those aren't sloppy lines.
Yeah,
Those
there's no wasted moment.
No,
yeah.
Whether it's the language or the way a character looks at another character, all of that is by design.
Yeah.
And so now if you reassess some of those lines with this through this lens, I just feel like it kind of explains all of them. So I'm all in on this, but I'm prepared for it to be something else. And if it is, I'll be fine with it.
We're
That's where I am.
We're hot off the presses of us being like, Billy totally cast a sigil on himself. And then right away we were like,
but dude, you called the car crash thing.
Well, the internet was in on that, so like I'm not taking credit for that. But
wonderful stuff,
really good stuff.
But but actually, that was another one where the Agatha car crash line from episode 1 felt so, it just stood out, right, and then it bore fruit and paid off, and so all of these other lines, I think it gives us even more confidence that they're gonna. They're going to lead somewhere. Let's
do this. And at the end of laying this out, I do want to talk about whether or not we feel like it would be satisfying or dissatisfying to watch a redo of WandaVision in a sense.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So the most compelling argument, other than the fact that Billy is Wanda Maximoff's son, is the avalanche of Easter eggs that we get inside of both William Kaplan's room, and Billy Maximoff's room 3 years later.
Say what you put in the doc.
Billiam.
Thank you.
And the way that Alice, Lilia, and Jen all touch on Billy's life pre-road, there's a couple of classic Portal World storytelling touchstones here. And I was so happy that we did an entire episode on Portal World storytelling. And you can go back and listen to that if you want to, a tropes course we did on a Portal Worlds, which is like a story where you go down the rabbit hole, through the looking glass, any kind of thing where you're sort of find yourself in this other world. And so the one that they've been driving home the hardest, the one that crops up the most in Billy's room, to the point where I'm like, Billy, what is your obsession here? Is the Wizard of Oz. And like seeing first Lilia, then Alice, then Jen, and then Sharon, all in this like time leading up to going into the Witch's Road, has to make us think about the film The Wizard of Oz, where the farmhands, Hunk, Zeke, Hickory, Mrs. Gulch, the professor are all like become the Scarecrow, become the Cowardly Lion, become the Wicked Witch, become the wizard inside of Dorothy's dream. That's a movie conceit, not a book conceit. But like Return to Oz, the 1985 Nightmare Fuel extravaganza, also does a similar thing, only they add a mental hospital. It's extra fun. The way that Alice in Alice in Wonderland creates like her whole Wonderland out of tea parties, playing cards, chess pieces, flowers, things from her life, or the way this is the one that really pinged for me, just because I've seen this movie so many times. In the film Labyrinth, the main character Sarah, played by Jennifer Connelly, her room is just stuffed with stuffed animals, toys, figurines that all become characters inside of the labyrinth when she goes into the labyrinth. So, and this idea that all of those portal worlds, Alice is dreaming, Dorothy's dreaming, Sarah, questionable, but that's the beauty of the labyrinth. It's ambiguous. So if we look at the Easter egg extravaganza that is Billiam's room, we get the Oz references, so many Oz references on every wall, just in case we were looking down at our phone, just to make sure you get it. But let's go through some of the other stuff we see here. We see in Billy Maximoff's room, we see a Saw poster, which connects to the sort of like diabolical, lethal, timed puzzles that the Coven have to unlock. We get an Alice in Wonderland poster. We get a off-brand Goonies poster called Goofballs, but it is the Goonies poster essentially, and that speaks to like a sense of adventure, going underground on an adventure where there's supposed to be treasure at the end of this sort of like underground journey. We get the craft, which we've been talking about a bit. It shows up in the closing credits, but this idea that Billy will go on to say in the road, witchcraft, emphasis on the craft. We get the very same Fleetwood Mac poster that we saw on the wall in Alice's episode Trial. We also get, of course, the very same record that is playing in Alice's Trial. We get the Eastview pennant that we saw in Agatha's Trial, if that was Agatha's Trial. We get board games are stacked all over the place, and I could not enhance enough to find a Ouija board, but I bet there's one there. We got a Moon Phases poster. We got Phases of the Moon chair. We got posters of trees that look like the ones on the road. We've got trees around the record player. There's a Carrie poster, which is the story of a telekinetic teen. A Black Cauldron poster, which trailer spoilers for the Black Cauldron poster. Bedknobs and Broomsticks, which is about incredible film that I absolutely love, where Angela Lansbury plays a witch who takes in these like war orphans. So about like a witch teaching, guiding children. Jennifer's Body, queer horror classic. An Evanescence poster that I can talk about in a second. And there's not a ton to represent Jen, but there is like some of the moon lamps that show up in that house are there. And I also just like have to believe that Rebecca Kaplan, the Gen X legend that she is, watched Big Little Lies with her son.
Right.
Like had Billy
Right.
watch Big Little Lies with her.
Right.
So
And obviously we'll see Jen on, the
On
YouTube
YouTube
when he
channel.
opens the computer, but also when he went into the shop, we got
Yeah.
the great, like, I'm a huge fan of your
Yeah.
Insta. So Jen is in
yeah.
Billiam's life in another way, if not via Easter eggs plastered on the walls. Yeah.
So this idea of like the road changes for the coven is all well and good, but why is there Billy all over
Everywhere.
every single trial? So let's say that like his mom, Wanda, you're so like your mother, right?
Yes.
That Billy has unintentionally created the witch's road to match his fantasy. And there's two big Agatha lines in this episode that pull this out for me. One is when she says, he's like, fine, I'll do it myself. I'll walk the witch's road. I don't need you. I'll walk the witch's road alone. And then he tries to make his blue power go in his hand and it just fizzles and she cackles. And she says, oh, sure. With all that power you can't control without throwing a temper tantrum. And if we go back, and we talked about this at the time, the opening of the portal was so odd to us.
Yeah.
The portal, as we noted at the time, it doesn't open up until Billy, overwhelmed and panicking at being chased by the Salem 7, needs an escape. He's upstairs. We don't see him when the portal appears, but it needs an escape. The portal is glowing blue, which we took to mean blue for Jen's water trial, which it is. The road is coded different colors. But blue is also the color of Billy's magic. So if Billy, in like his panic at being attacked, creates this portal into this portal world, I love the idea of he's like clutching Senior Scratchy right before he does it. That makes him
which we also remarked upon.
Yeah, we were like, why? So
the bunny is there right before this, and then not there. Yeah.
So Alice in Wonderland coded, of course.
Yeah.
And then also the title of that episode is Circle Sewn with Fate, Unlock Thy Hidden Gate. Circle, I have some questions about, but Sewn with Fate, like Billy is essentially sewn up by Lilia, who is like standing in for the fates inside of this episode. So like, he's the thing sewn with fate, and he unlocked the hidden gate here. I'm willing to accept an idea that, and we'll talk about this later with the black heart emoji, that Billy actually was just the missing piece of the coven and they needed him in the room in order to unlock the portal. But we got some other things to talk about when it comes to clues. But how are you feeling so far about some of the stuff laid out here?
Compelled. I think on the portal front as well.
Yeah.
In addition to like the Alice and all that, it's not just the initial entry. If we think back through the trials, something involving Billy is always what opens the portal back to the road, right? Like we have, it's his blood is like the crucial final thing to get the plastic bottle laden potion exactly where it needs to be in the first trial. And then so with we talked last week, like, oh my God, he touched the Ouija board alone. He's not supposed to touch the Ouija board alone, but it's only when he does that, after he shouts Nicholas Scratch, that the stairwell exit, portal within portal opens, and then went out of order. But it's his gaping wound that ends up bringing them back out to the road. Obviously, like when we're tracking what is fueling the success of the ballad and the song in real time, it seemed like Billy was maybe the one risking them not completing it. But now, like through a slightly different lens, it's like he was the reason that they actually moved forward and left. So it's interesting to kind of consider all of that again through that idea of like, is he the one forging the path? Is he the one forging the reality?
Yeah, and when he's the one who goes to the door and he's like, this is the moon phase. This is the element we're dealing with. He's opening the door. He's opening doors here and there and everywhere.
And I think also this would be particularly helpful in answering our question from last episode about why would this be the setting for Agatha's trial, if it is Agatha's trial, because we're going to, hit later, like the very sweet moment where his mom asks about watching the movie together. But like pop culture, you already said, pop culture posters all over the room, plastering the room. It's like Billy is a consumer. And so the idea that would be his context for how Agatha might work through an issue with her mother.
Yeah.
Feels really right.
Feels right.
So I like all of this. On the Oz front, did
Yeah.
you see this is important even outside of the theory corner here. Catherine Hahn is on Instagram. Attention, bad babies. Catherine Hahn is on Instagram. This is a crucial moment in our shared history.
I love it.
She posted a very Ozian picture of her feet and Joe Locke's feet with some red shoe action.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay. Very exciting.
Check it out.
Check it out. Ruby slippers, ahoy. So the other thing that Agatha says in this episode, I mean, she says a ton of very important things, but the other thing that really pings for me is when she's talking to Billy, she's covered in mud, and she says this. Steve, will you play this clip?
Gosh, you really are a Maximoff. Otherwise, none of this would be nearly as dramatic.
It's quite rude, but true.
Wonderful. Worth noting, this is an audio clip. She is gesturing sort of all around her as she says this. She's not saying this conversation. She's saying all of this. None of this would be nearly as dramatic. As in, you've created quite the cornucopia of pop culture references for us to travel down in this particular setting. I think that's wonderful. And then we need to get to all of these little moments that we've been like, what's that mean? What's that?
Yep.
What's going on there? So if you go back and you watch episode 2, where Agatha, when they open the portal, Agatha sort of squats down, kneels down, and picks up some dirt. She's very much like in her Mare of Easttown detective mode. She's sifting through the dirt as if she's like, what the hell is this? Right? Because this is not the witch's road that she is familiar with, right? And that's like so the performance. She's like, what is this? She's sort of bemused as everyone is just sort of like, we gotta go. She's like, okay, let's go. Also, there's a scary demon lady after me, so I guess I'll go down here. She goes down. Right. She walks down. They stand on the road. She's standing in front. She looks quizzically at Billy, and then he just smiles broadly at her, and she's like, I never doubted us for a second. Let's go. It plays very much like, this is not the witch's row, but whatever this is, I'm so curious about it. And whatever you've done here, Billy, I'm very interested to see what it is. And when immediately at the very beginning of episode 3, this is the first thing we hear. Steve, will you play this?
It's exactly how I pictured it.
Yes. Suits you.
Mal, what do you want to say about that?
I went back to WandaVision and some of the key conversations between Wanda and Agatha, a lot of which are about, all of which feel newly significant, and a lot of which are about the specific nature of Wanda's magic.
Tell me.
And what she is able to do. And how, first of all, covetous Agatha is of that, but also how unique it is. Now, obviously, like, the big reveal, right, is not just Agatha all along. It's the buildup to this is chaos magic and you are the Scarlet Witch, which is like a distinct thing.
Yes.
That said, this is all being bundled for us in the like, you are so like your mother, right? And so it's reasonable for us to think not only about what Wanda and Billy share, but about what Agatha would see in those similarities, right? Or what she would be looking for.
Yeah.
In pursuing and seeking those similarities, which I found particularly notable. And I mean, it was helpful that Billy was like, when did you know? And then to hear Agatha's answer to that and kind of like assess it through that lens, if she was suspicious or thought this might be the case from the jump. So like, when she's just kind of like, here's how this works, your magic, here's what you can do. Quick incantation and a feeble psyche, and you're good to go. With thousands of people under your thumb, all interacting with each other, according to complex storylines, well, that's something special, baby. And of course, there's transmutation, years of study to achieve even the smallest convincing illusion. But Westview through your lens, Wanda, every little detail in place down to the crown molding. You're even running illusions miles away at the edge of town. Magic on autopilot. What's your secret? Magic on autopilot feels like so much what's at play here for Billy, and very much like the thing that would be driving the it suits you kind of response. Yeah. Like, if it's magic on autopilot, that it is your essence.
He just manifested this.
Yeah, it is something that reflects you.
Yeah.
And so like it suits you feels like just the extension of what he said to her mother. Magic on autopilot.
I love that. And I love that you went back to WandaVision to study that. And I think that like thinking about when we meet Agatha inside of the detective story that she has sort of like semi-crafted for herself. It's not that like, it's not like Wanda on her way out of town said like, Mayor of Easttown, that's it, right? This is something that like Agatha has sort of concocted for herself. We hear Rio comment on it when she arrives and she's like, is this really how you see yourself?
Yes.
But in this episode, we hear Billy say to her in the flip of the interrogation scene where we see what really happened. He says, detective, that's not what I was expecting, but I can totally see that for you. So this idea of like creating the narrative to fit the person, and also that idea of Agatha as the constantly curious, constantly asking questions, constantly following clues. I'll just follow you down this road, whatever this is that you've manifested, because I want to know, how does it work and how did you do it?
Right.
We get the weird moment in episode 3 right before they get to the beach house that we commented on and we couldn't really suss out, when Billy says it would be a bummer if this was the end of the road. And everyone gives him a look, but Agatha gives him like a long look in that moment.
Yep.
And then this is a moment that people were sort of like kicking around in theory corner before this episode. Someone on TikTok I know like picked up this moment in episode 4 when Agatha is again in detective mode, sort of hunched over the dead body of Mrs. Hart. And this is how episode 4 opens. Steve, will you play this clip?
I didn't think you had it in you.
You didn't think you would win them.
And then she winks at him.
Yeah.
So the implication here to me, I don't think that Billy, the theory going around is that Billy is like the villain and that he killed Mrs. Hart. I do not think that Billy killed Mrs. Hart, or certainly did not intend to.
Right.
But this question of, did he create a world so real that it's potentially lethal for the people navigating it? The wink she gives him is just sort of like, I'm talking about, didn't think you had it in you. That's what I'm talking about. How would you interpret that otherwise?
Yeah, I that sounds right to me. And I think like one of my favorite moments in this episode was Agatha's like, life goes on. Yours anyway.
Yeah.
To remind him of all the people, the peril that has befallen all of their traveling mates.
Yeah.
Rio notably absent from the road and from the glimpses of the sequences in the past where she was. So that's interesting to kind of think about. But he was horrified. He was horrified by this, like not just the fact that she's laughing as she's failing to count how many people she's killed over the years, but that's like whoa, we're not. I don't laugh about killing people. I wouldn't do that. Right. And of course, like this was. I also do not think that Billy is going to be the villain of the story. I don't think that that's how Wiccan is going to be introduced into the MCU. That just doesn't feel likely.
No. I don't think there's going to be a villain of this story. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I think it's just going to come down to hard choices, but I don't think it's going to be like there's
conflict in the human heart.
Yeah. I don't think
it's the only thing.
Here's Mephisto out from the shadows. Wahaha. I don't think that's.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to see Mephisto. Yeah. I do think we'll see Tommy, but I don't think we're going to see Mephisto.
Tommy. Yeah.
Tommy.
Toby. I would love. No one has necessarily all the time in the world to go back and rewatch the scenes, but if you want to go back and rewatch Rio as she's first regarding the road when she gets there, you could read it as, her sort of manic, here's the road, that's cool. I read it as she's like, we're calling this the Witch's Road? Okay, I guess. Cool production design.
Right.
Steve, will you play this clip?
Oh, Witch's Road, huh? Okay. Oh, this is cool.
That okay, sort of like, sure, if you say so. This is the Witch's Road, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. That's real, like, gold star on your school project.
Yeah.
But this is, like, not the real thing energy. I like that read. Yeah, that's...
She's all... Side theory about Rio. to your point, she's not in the episode. If we are convinced that Rio is dead, her curiosity about Billy, why did you bring that boy? She asks Agatha in episode 4. That boy isn't yours. So our interpretation was like, that's not Nicholas Scratch. But I think if she and Agatha both know that that's probably Billy, this idea of like, and a point you brought up a couple times is this idea that Billy and Agatha had a connection in WandaVision when he was a child. And so she's like, you can't replace Nicholas Scratch with Billy. You can't have this kid. I think we're all a little concerned about the fact that Billy broke the rules in order to stuff his soul inside the dead body of William Kaplan.
He's not yours because he's literally mine. Yeah.
Rio's entry into the show in the Mayor of Easttown thing is, what are you doing here? My job.
I am concerned.
I have concerns.
I am concerned.
So to quote the legend Charlie Pace from the television series Lost, guys, where are we? If we're not on the Witch's Road,
right?
Where the hell are we? And that's when we have to thank Sharon, legend in her own right, rest in peace, who gave us that answer, I think, in episode 3 when she said, and we noted it at the time. She said, quote, okay, I'm a member of the Westview Historical Society. All I would have expected to see down here were remnants of our failed public transit system. I think we're in the Westview tunnels, and Rio is just in the neighborhood and popped down to the tunnels below Westview that Billy has transformed into this fantastical road adventure. What do you think about that?
Again, that line is just like, what else could it be?
No wasted lines. Yeah.
And also Billy, the fact that he was an admirer of Jen's work, that Lilia was at his bar mitzvah, that Alice was at the car crash, like all of these things from his life. Well, he's an obsessive researcher, right? He's like looking up everything about people and places. And also like, the line about like, it's just like, oh, it's about the place. It's like about the town.
Yeah.
It's like the idea that he would have specific place that he would have like come across something about, and then just incorporate that, use it for this fiction that he is spinning to make his way to Tommy and to the thing that he needs. Feels right. Feels right. Yeah.
This is the last thing we're going to do, and then we are retiring Theory Corner for a second. Which is to say, we already kind of answered this, but like, if this is a hex-like spell, why would Agatha follow another Maximoff into another hex, having just done it with Wanda? And I think part of it is that insatiable curiosity, that sort of just thirst for knowledge. Why was she strung up by her coven in the first place? Because she stole knowledge that didn't belong to her, right? Like, she's constantly curious, as is Billy, She's assembling dossiers, he's assembling dossiers. But I think also there is this like idea of her not being like her mom and her sort of nurturing. I fell into this trap with WandaVision, though, because I definitely thought Agatha was there to help Wanda, and I was wrong. But like this idea that she is like nurturing Billy's power rather than reviling or shunning or shaming him the way that her mother did to her. Let's hear this exchange between Agatha and Billy.
I'm not like you.
Where have I heard that before? Tell me. I just gotta know. Where did you come by this fresh body you're wearing? Okay, you don't want to tell me. That's fine. But don't you dare feel guilty about your talent. You survived, like witches have been doing for centuries. You saw an opportunity, an empty vessel, and you moved in. So you broke the rules. Big deal. That's what kept you alive. That's what makes you special. That's what makes you a witch.
Mallory, thoughts and feelings?
Questions, comments, concerns?
Yeah.
So, okay. I loved this for a number of different reasons. I think that back at the beginning of the season, actually, as they're trying to summon the road, right, we had that lovely, like, this was just a power grab. She wants us to attack her, right? Lilia realization. And Agatha says, I don't have time for this. Just blast me, you bitches. And we, iconic. And, you know, we carry not only the events of WandaVision, but a moment like that with us. We carry what we saw last episode with Alice with us. How could we not? How could Agatha not? How could Billy not?
Yeah.
And that was so destabilizing for us because, as we talked about at length last week, I felt like an almost equal measure how true both of those pulls were, right? The desire for power, like the way that she just actually starts grasping at it, was real.
Yes.
That look on her face was real. But when she said, I can't control it, that was real too. And her shame and her guilt felt real too. And her desire to try to be better, like even if that's a difficult thing for her and has been a difficult thing, I can be good.
I can be good.
And if other people have made her believe she can't, that felt real too. So we bring all of that with us in a way where, like, there was a little part of me watching this episode where I was like, oh, we're back to like kind of like Agatha's the villain. Like, Agatha's evil. Agatha's cackling. Agatha can't remember how many people she's killed. Does that feel right? But I think it does, because this oscillation is inherent to who she is. It's like that is the thing she has to work through.
Right.
And so the fact that there is like a part of us that actually wonders if at the end, the reason she followed Billy in, or what she might want at the end, is his power.
Correct.
I think that that's there. I think also, I'm with you completely that the test and the trial will be her making a different choice, whether it's to spare him, to save him, to help him. And I think that what we just heard in that clip is just as real and ultimately, hopefully dominant. Something shared between them. The thing that she didn't get from her mother and wasn't able to give to her own son, right? And so if that can be the thing that he reminds her of, her shame, her failing, the way other people let her down, can be the thing that leads to her finally making a different choice, like that will be a beautiful journey to have been a part of.
And that's what I mean when I think, like, I don't think at the end of the road, it's like, again, to your point about the critique of WandaVision, like, I don't think we're leading to some sort of big CGI battle in the sky again. I don't think they're going to do that. I think it's going to come down to, like, emotional decisions needing to be made.
Yes.
Which WandaVision did do. Like, I will say, I hate the battle in the sky, but Wanda undoing the Hex and her family is devastating. And
the conversation with Vision is like, you are my sadness. Gut-wrenching. I think, like, so on that front, the other line that really stood out to me rewatching some of the Agatha Wanda scenes, this is from episode 8 as well. I tried to be gentle. This is this is Agatha saying this to Wanda. I tried to be gentle, to nudge you awake from this ridiculous fantasy, but you'd rather fall apart than face your truth. Why follow him in? Why play along? Why finally get to the point where she tickles his chin and says, you're just like your mother? Maybe it's that.
I love that. Which brings us back to the Evanescence poster, which I didn't talk about, but, like, why is the Evanescence? Oh, it's like, I think it's an Evanescence vinyl. Why is that there? I jokingly put in the notes that when I did the Lost podcast with our pals Neil Miller and Dave Gonzalez, when we got into the final season, which involved people in this sort of like parallel universe that they had to wake up from, every time we talked about it, Dave just needle dropped "Wake Me Up" by Evanescence over us talking. He would just like Steve on the soundboard, just like hit it. And I can't think of that song without laughing, but I think Evanescence "Wake Me Up" is sort of, because something that I would say about the pop culture references that are in Billy's room.
Yes.
They're of the wrong time period. And, like, maybe I shouldn't be so particular about that with a 3-year-old invention that is inside the body of another 13-year-old. What is time? How influential is Rebecca's taste or Jeff's taste on Billy and that sort of stuff. But like this is a slight pet peeve of mine that I have, where like oftentimes, you know, these pop culture obsessed writers in the writers' room will put their pop culture touchstones on. You get this a lot in Euphoria, like the Euphoria Halloween episodes where they're dressing up in like 90s references. And I'm like, I don't know that that's what they would do. And so these feel like the references of people who are around my age, which is how old, like, you know, at least Jack is and a couple other people are in the writers' room. So let's rewind. Speaking of youth, shall we?
Just a round of applause for you. That was great.
I mean, hold it loosely. If it's not true. But okay, so at the end of the day, if we find out, oh, we just watched WandaVision again, but this time blue. How will you, I mean, it, as far as I'm concerned, it's all has to do with execution.
That's how I feel about it too.
So it's just going to depend
poorly executed and it's the same kind of concept a second time and not satisfying, then I will think it was a mistake.
Yeah.
But if they nail it, which feels like what we're heading toward, then I think it's not only acceptable, but actually fairly compelling, because a lot of this is about what you inherit and what you share. And I'm into it. I'm so curious to see where we go in the final few episodes. Man, and now again, trailer nugget here. If you don't want to hear this, hit fast forward once. But that shot in the trailer of Agatha like putting her hands on Billy's head in like the hospital kind of setting, it just feels like going back through Wanda's memories.
Yes.
Like we just did a Billy flashback episode, so I don't know if we're gonna get exactly that, but like I do think that a lot of those beats might still happen in some capacity, or maybe that'll be when we get Agatha's memories. I don't know.
Oh, but yeah. I have a really fun theory about that. We'll talk about that a little later on. Okay, so let's go to the magical mitzvah of William Kaplan. I'm obsessed.
I would be delighted. This is wonderful.
So we open on and we should say that they made the choice in the writers' room to call Billy Kaplan William Kaplan so we could better distinguish between the two, and I think that was a brilliant move. So this is Billy Kaplan in the comics, William Kaplan here. And opening on William fussing with his curls is so Charlie Spring in Heartstopper, which is Joe Locke's Heartstopper character. I cannot, like, Charlie is forever like messing with his curls on the way out the door. Were you thinking of your recent sojourn through Heartstopper when he was messing with his curls here?
As anybody who did not listen to the Penguin episode may not know, I but a week ago had not seen a second of Heartstopper, and now have only 2 episodes left of 3 seasons, and have absolutely adored it, and have adored my time with Charlie and Nick, and the whole gang. Hell, Tao, everyone. Just love them all.
It's a wonderful show if you haven't seen it.
Love them all
on Netflix.
And it was like Charlie and Charlie and Nick were so top of mind for me watching this in a wonderful way that I mean I don't think you obviously need to have seen Heartstopper to enjoy this episode of television, certainly, but I found it enriching and wonderful.
I think also I just, when the latest season of Heartstopper came out, I rewatched it, and watching those boys or all those kids who were like a good deal younger when the show started versus now, those mannerisms, I think Joe Locke Joe Locke, who was roughly 20 years old when he shot this season of television, maybe 19, but more likely 20, he's 21 now, playing a 13-year-old. But I would say rather convincingly, like he's got, a slender frame. Like there are things about him that are convincing in one way or another, but there's just something about the way that he was carrying his body differently that just really, and then I was like looking closely, I'm like, you can't really digitally de-age a 20-year-old's face. It's already smooth as
it's
a
like,
baby.
Slightly different hairstyle.
Like bushier hair, but it's convincing to me. It all worked. So
very much so. Yeah. And I also just loved the, I know you're gonna talk about the Torah portion in a moment, but I loved the cut from the Torah portion to the swaying and the dance floor to the party, because it was so You Are So Not Invited to My Bat Mitzvah to me, the recent Adam Sandler Netflix movie, which I loved and actually thought was great.
Yeah.
This idea that like these middle schoolers spend all of this time thinking about like how this party is going to be this defining thing. I loved it. And like, that is worth saying for a minute, right? Because we had that Alice and teen conversation about like, yeah, like a lot happened to me at 13 too. And now we understand many things about that newly, right? That's when the car crash happened. That's when William died. That's when Billy Maximoff's, you said they're not going to say Soul Shard. I'll say it. Soul Shard made its way into this empty vessel in the backseat of the Kaplan car, etc. But also like, this is when Billy had we open here for a reason, I think, not just to root us in a friend group, a family, a community, but very specifically a time in a young Jewish boy's life, like when you're 13 and you have your bar mitzvah, and it's a rite of passage, that moment. And so like seeing William smiling and dancing with his friends, it doesn't just cement the like a lot happened to me at 13 timeframe part of it, though I think it does. It shows us also obviously like what his life was like before he became Billy. Like those kids on the dance floor are his friends, and then he doesesn't remember them, and that is just fucking devastating. And his like there's some stuff with his parents that is so sad I could barely bring myself to talk about, but this part is like he doesn't remember any of that.
In this portion, the Torah reading into the party, we see Rebecca and Jeff Kaplan and how they are just bursting with pride and love for this kid. And then we get the smallest of scenes of like, eat this food. I love you more than human words can express, all this sort of stuff like that. Gross. You're gross. Like, like their cute little family dynamic. And that's all we see of the Kaplan family, before like we're rushing and we're in the car and all that sort of stuff like that. But like, that's what we see of like, what was lost.
Right.
And
it's enough.
It's so effective.
Yeah.
It's so effective. Okay. So to go back to the Torah portion, he opens up the cabinet, which is called the Torah Ark, to pull out the scrolls here. And those cabinets can be carved with any number of things, but they went with a tree. So, we'll come back to the trees in a second. And then our listener, Rachel, wrote in, and her email was titled, "Finally, my bat mitzvah comes in handy." So she wrote in to let us know what the reading was that William does here. And she said it's Leviticus chapter 10, verse 1. Basically, it's the story of the high priest Aaron's two oldest sons. They improperly perform a sacrifice and are burned to death as a consequence. It's normally read around early April. Don't know if that's relevant. Quote, Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu, each took a fire pan, put coals that were on fire in it, placed incense upon the fire, and thus brought before God a fire that was foreign, inasmuch as he had not commanded them to offer it up. So, two sons, a ritual gone awry. That seems pretty straightforward, right? Okay.
Yep.
I love the idea. I love the magical theme because, we can't all be visionaries and have Jello as our theme at our mitzvah. And so,
honestly, if I did it today, I probably would pick magic. So,
but would you pick magic or magic? Because this is a thing.
Magic. Great question. Probably magic.
William Kaplan loves magic. He's got Houdini posters. He loves sort of like sword and sandal stuff. There's Narnia stuff around, blah, blah, blah. William loves magic with a CK. Like that's the difference between these two boys. We get more tree imagery though on the tables. We get like there's moons all over the place and there's trees as centerpieces on all the table. Once again, giving us that road imagery inside of Billy's life.
I wish we had gotten to see more interactions with the theme. It's obviously very important to go to Lilia's tent. Lilia's tent. Wonderful. But like you could glimpse when everyone's rushing out, like you can glimpse a little sign for tea leaf reading, like a tea leaf station. Wonderful.
Amazing.
Do you think anyone saw the Grim at the bottom of the teacup?
Oh my God, we can only hope. Take us into Lilia's tent. How did you react to seeing Lilia here and this reveal?
So this was wild, all of this. Like first of all, I love the welcome to the curious. Are we looking behind us or ahead? I don't want to know too much reply from Billy. Like, I mean, well before we get to I found a theory guy on Reddit stuff. Like, this is just all very audience avatar, right? Very meta in a way that I really loved. And also, of course, like this episode is very much, you have to understand the past so that we can move into the future together. So, and then with Lily as a character, like we've talked about this kind of like she is out of time, her psyche, all of that just felt like, okay, this is a meaningful moment that we are about to watch. She asks for his right palm, and she says that it's clear that a long journey lies ahead of him. This journey will be one of great transformation. Certainly, I would say so,
In
because
every
there's
sense.
a soul shard of another child.
Oh no, you're going to say shard as many times
inside
as
of
you
him.
can.
I am.
Yeah,
Well,
okay.
I just also like, of course, I can't help but think like a shard of Voldemort's soul latching onto, it's like impossible not to think about that. So soul shard's very much on the mind. The line, your lifeline is broken in two. We get a long, lingering look at this. Later during the car crash scene, when we look at the hex from the outside, I was like, the rune looked like the V in the lifeline to me. Like, and
cool.
But what do they both look like ultimately? Like, obviously, we understand what this is now literally about, right? We've got the William and the Billy, but it's a fork in the road, right? So it's all of this is connecting to the road. And then Billy reasonably is like, I mean, it just simply can't be good. I called him Billy. William simply can't be good.
Yeah.
And, I love that, like, before Lilia makes the choice that she makes, but, where we build toward this, like, great moment at the end where she basically is just like, live in the now, kind of gives him this advice. Enjoy the now, baby. It's the only thing that's certain, which, especially with a character like Lilia or a character like Agatha, they're hundreds of years old. They've gone through all of this history and all of this trauma. That idea of Lily's receiving intel from their future self. We think like live in the now is such an interesting thing to hear, given what is about to happen for William, but also given like who Lilia is.
But
so
I will, sorry, just to yes and that, I will say that like that hit me so hard. I think that's why it was seeing him in the Hava Nagila like moment, because that happens like right after that, right? Is like she says that as if she knows he's about to die. This kid is about to die in a car. And I had the car crash theory rolling around in my head. So I was like, oh my God, he's about to die. And so then to see him lofted up on the chair and everyone just so much joy around him, and he looks so young, and you're just like, and that's, I mean, we'll get to this idea of like,
Very
is
sad.
William Kaplan gone forever? That's a kind of question that I have.
Yeah.
I'm of two minds about it. I don't need it to be one way or another, but if he's dead and he's gone forever, I don't like that kind of stakes on a show. Like that's just the tragedy baked in with the bonering that happens in this episode to make the brew that we all enjoy.
The brew.
Yeah.
Oh, the brew. So we're going to get to a Tarot Corner TM with Joanna Robinson TM in just a second here. But here's what Lilia actually sees. Because when she's saying this journey will be one of great transformation, and she halts, the light blinks, the energy in the room crackles, and then we see upside down in the crystal ball, Billy.
Yeah.
Our Billy. He's in his torn sweater, his eyeliner. Like, this is the teen that we have been spending time with. And so what we don't know is exactly what Lilia understands from this. Does she know that this is Wanda Maximoff's kid? Does she know that this is Wiccan? Does she know exactly what Billy is going to do on the road, what's about to happen? Or does she know less of the specifics, but that this kid's life, because of the broken lifeline, is about to change? This is the end for him and the beginning for someone else. Whatever extent of knowledge she is able to glean in that moment. And I think it's particularly interesting to think about that with Lilia, because like, it's like, what is she consciously aware of in a moment like that? Compared to like these mini trance dispatches where like she doesn't seem to really know always what is happening, right? Or who is speaking through her or why. So it is a significant enough thing that she has moved to make the sigil. And so we have to assume that she thought it was important that Billy not know who he is, and that nobody else, including her, know who he is either, right?
And that he kind of knows who he is. I think that's sort of there is some like gray area in this of like, what did Billy know and when did he know it? But this idea of like,
certainly piecing it together.
Is she binding him? Is she protecting him? Is she hiding him from whom? From death? From like whatever. my favorite thing to come out of this episode are all the people who are like, is Lilia's sigil the reason Multiverse of Madness happened? Because she hid Billy and Wanda couldn't find him. Question mark Tommy. But like Wanda couldn't find him. And that's why we got Multiverse of Madness. Is that I'm not going to blame Lilia for that, but it's just fun to think about.
It's a tough one.
Tough one for Lilia.
Tough one to carry, Lilia.
I look forward to Lilia seeing Billy, presuming they are reunited. And what her reaction will be now that the sigil is lifted.
Same.
I like
the way it was cool that it would, I mean, we understood this to be true. It works on the Witch Who Cast It, but to see how it instantly, she puts it in the pocket of the jacket and she's like,
no idea.
Some kid left this here. I don't know.
So good.
Great stuff. So Joe, tell us about the tower reversed. When she goes into her mini trance dispatch, she says, the tower reversed. William says, I thought you were reading my palm. Oh, I'm sorry. I just remembered something.
I think. Oh, so good. I just remembered something, I think. Questions abound about how Lilia's powers work. But the tower, something I really quickly wanted to say is that I said last week that there wasn't a card for Alice. That's not true. They did release a card for her, the Knight of Wands or whatever, but it just for some reason hasn't been traveling around in the graphics with these other ones that they put out. I don't know why. Maybe because 9 conveniently fit, but 10 don't, or something like that. I don't know. But the tower card, 2 people falling from a tower struck by lightning, the crown on top of it. That is all actual tower card iconography. The crown doesn't usually look like a blue Wiccan crown. It's usually like a gold crown, but like that's all there. And something that our listener Helen pointed out, and a number of other people, is that the sign of the sigil is in the corner of all the promotional tarot cards that they put out for the show. So if we wanted a clue about who put the sigil on Teen, we maybe should have looked at the cards even closer. That would have maybe been helpful.
This to me was very Rings of Power season 1. Like, oh, right, that's Mordor on the map.
Yeah.
Like that it feels in hindsight like, oh yeah, of course that's what this shape, this symbol was, and how all these things were going to connect. But in real time, it's exactly. It's sideways. How could we know?
How could we possibly know? The tower reversed suggests that you are undergoing a significant personal transformation and upheaval. This differs from the tower upright, where the change is often because of external circumstances and may even feel forced upon you. The tower reverse can be a sign that you are resisting change and delaying the necessary destruction and upheaval. You may be in denial that change is occurring, or you may be clinging to an old belief system, even though you know they're no longer relevant or healthy for you. So this idea that like this transformation for Billy is something that this sort of feeds into my theory of this idea of like, does he need to become both Billy and William in order to get to stay in that body? That's a question I have, right? Like, and does he need to be forced into, do we need to wake William up somehow? Like, you know, all this sort of stuff, like what is the transformation that he is resisting? He's created this hex. So in a way he's like sleeping to a certain degree inside of this fantasy, but that's just a question I have. I don't know.
Yeah. Interesting. It's like he can't leave the body.
Yeah.
Because Joe Locke has to be Wiccan.
But can he have the memories of William Kaplan?
Yeah.
And have also the new memories of Billy sort of mooshed together.
Interesting.
Again, I don't mind a show where a teen dies. I'm sad that he died, but I don't think it's like it's a Disney show he has to live. But it would be nice for Jeff and Rebecca Kaplan to have their kid, you know?
Yeah, I'm torn on this too, because like part of me feels like then he would almost be like a passenger in his own life, like kind of like almost like a prisoner in his own life if he's like, but I do, the single saddest thing in this entire episode to me, now I'm jumping ahead a little bit, is
Greg the dog.
No. Animals always know. Actually, that same scene though, like when Rebecca and Jeff bring him home, and everything is ready, there's the stress, the anxiety, like you're confronting the fact, you as the viewer, that the Kaplans never got to mourn their son. Like they don't know their child died, and also they did not get to grieve him. That is, you could say it's a great gift that Billy in a different way is in their life.
Yeah.
But it is, I think, like deeply, deeply upsetting that they don't know what happened to their son. That's horrible.
I agree with that. And I also think it's devastating to watch Billy in real time placate. Like, he just doesn't want them to be upset.
Yes.
And so
I think that he will tell them the truth at the end of the season. That feels like something we're going to see. Them get that closure, I think.
Before we leave Lilia's tent, Billy calls it early Argento, which I'm just like considering this native advertising for the podcast Trial by Content, which is currently doing witch movies. So if you've never listened to Trial by Content, but you want more witch stuff, we're doing a witch trial royale, which is a lot of witch movies. And we watched Suspiria, directed by Dario Argento. So here we go. The hex collapses. And the hex collapsing sort of kind of causing the Kaplan crash reminds me so much of what we were just talking about earlier this week with spoilers for the Penguin, the flood from the Batman being the devastation on Victor's family. Just this like nice connective tissue of the huge set piece of this other thing, and how did it impact an entirely new set of characters who are living their life just one town over. I really loved that.
Yeah, this was like my stomach just, I don't know, the second, because they have to rush out.
Yeah.
And then the second we see them in a car, just my stomach started to twist, because you just know that this crash that Agatha mentioned in the first episode is coming into play. And we know that she said the 2 airbags in the front deployed and there was a blood stain in the back. And you're just like, oh my God, this is like about to be horrible. And then it is. This was so gruesome.
Audio
and upsetting.
Of his heartbeat slowing and then stopping entirely.
Yeah. Yes. And like the thump of like his seat,
his specific door,
oh my God,
colliding with the tree.
The panic of Jeff and Rebecca waking up and like seeing the blood in the back and that he wasn't moving. It was just, this was like,
and Rebecca's like, I can't get to him, like all this other stuff like that. I just thought it was really incredible.
Yeah. And then, Billy's soul, like soul shard, moving through, again, we were mentioning this beautiful scene from the WandaVision finale earlier, but I found it very, very, very emotionally rewarding to connect those 2 families in that way.
Yeah.
And again, like you said earlier, this is such a comic booky, in a way that we as comic book fans love, idea. And it's rooted and drenched here in human emotion. And like, that's why these like genre stories could be so wonderful and so meaningful and can like unlock something true about everyday existence through this particular method. And like, you think about like the saying goodbye, tucking in Billy and Tommy, right? Like a family is forever.
I just weep through that whole
family is forever. We can never truly leave each other, even if we tried. You know that, right? And it's like, they couldn't leave each other. Like Billy couldn't leave. That's the last thing he heard from his parents, and he couldn't leave.
I love that just last week we got people being like, but where's Tommy? And it's like, guess what? We haven't forgotten about Toby.
Tommy.
Tommy.
Toby, that killed me. Killed me.
So he screams Tommy as he comes, as basically Billy Kaplan comes to life. You were the one calling out reflective surfaces in an earlier episode in like the first 2 episodes. It was like Puddle Watch, right? We get a lot of reflective surface shots of Joe Locke as Billy. Like the most sort of glaring, poignant being the 2 mirrors. Why does 13-year-old Billy have 2 mirrors in his room? I don't need to ask, but he's got 2 mirrors, 2 mirrors set up. One is for the close up on the hair, and the other is for to check the fit, I guess. But
of course, fit watch. It actually made me think a little bit of Moon Knight, like the multiple mirrors and just like the different aspects of yourself.
I was watching so closely. I was like, is the other reflection going to do something different from the main reflection or something? You're right. I was Moon Knight pilled. But yeah, there's also reflective surfaces of him like regarding himself in the window of the hospital room, like,
and his terror. He does not recognize himself.
Also, the concept of the shard of the soul again is complicated and somewhat ageless. Mm-hmm. But we get like a little bit of like a big moment, because like 13 is not that old, but it's older than Billy was when he went to bed in Westview. So,
but for Billy, that's old hat, right? Billy and Tommy are just like aging themselves up on a whim to get what they want.
Greg knows, as we mentioned, Greg the dog knows. Sparky knew also, we should say. And
Sparky,
rest
back in our hearts and minds after this episode.
Yeah,
the
Ralph
boner
wanted to make
has
sure
just-
we remembered Sparky.
Yeah. He's haunted by what he did, and as he fucking should be.
It reminded me of both Parent Trap versions where the dog knows that it's a different twin. And as you say, the dog always knows.
Always.
Anything? Oh, I want to ask the bad babies for a favor.
Okay.
Because whatever I use to watch things, I am not great at being able to like enhance. There's a box set of books on the top of William's dresser in his room. And my first thought that it was the Chronicles of Prydian, which the Black Cauldron is one of the books in the Chronicles of Prydian, but that is only 5-book series. This was 7 books. Not chunky enough to be Harry Potter, so definitely not Harry Potter, but it was like a beautiful box set. So I was thinking it might be Narnia, because Narnia is 7 books, but I could not find that box set anywhere. So it's possible that production designers like made a bespoke box set and put it on the table. But if you guys recognize that box set, I would be so curious, because it looked beautiful to me, and I love a beautiful hardcover box set situation. 3 years later.
3 years later.
3 years later. All right. Queer Icon Orville Peck is on the car radio, Dead of Night. Love that song. So happy to have it here. Then we get this Billy and Eddie scene, and I just found it so wonderful. Eddie, again, as with Rebecca and Jeff, we get very little time to know him, and I am immediately just so endeared to him. He's very sweet. And in the midst of his like anxious teenage, do I tell my boyfriend I love him moment, we get some lore intel, a download on how Billy's mind reading works, right?
Yes.
So he tells Eddie, so this thing happens when I'm with someone I care a lot about and they're having intense feelings. So, we hear the Kaplans. We'll talk about maybe why he could hear good old Ralph Boner a little bit later on. But from WandaVision, there's this interaction, we referenced it last week, between young Billy and Agatha.
Yes.
Where young Billy says to Agatha, I like it here. And she says, oh, good. Is it because Senior Scratchy is such a good listener? And he goes, no, it's because it's quiet. And then he turns to her like a child in a horror movie and he goes, you're quiet, Agnes, on the inside.
Oh man, normal.
So what does this mean? Does this mean that Billy doesn't care about Agatha? Does it mean that she's has her legitimacy up and like cannot be read? How do you read that?
Whether she is a Snape level practitioner of occlumency, I cannot say, but I like the idea that a couple things could be happening. Because like Billy, when he's a kid, doesn't understand his power.
Thank you for gently correcting my occluding versus other terminology. I appreciate you. We'll come back to Snape later on as a gift to you for your service.
Thank you. Whether that is because like initially in the town, it seems like he's hearing all sorts of people who wouldn't know or consider close. And eventually it's like allows us to get, and Wanda to find out what's happening to Vision, right, at the edge of town. But it's almost like he can't control the inputs. So is this like an evolution maybe in how they're presenting the power? That's one thing. That's one possibility. Is it that there's the initial kind of just influx and then there's a calibration? He doesn't hear Agatha because she's shielding herself. Seems entirely possible. She has repressed her emotion. Entirely possible. Maybe he's not close to her there. And then maybe he will work toward a point in this series where he can hear her and that will show the closeness. Yeah. That would be incredible. And on the sigil front too, like it was interesting to hear just the puzzle. Well, if you solved it, no, it's impossible part, because like you said earlier, like it's not that he doesn't know he's Billy. It was really fun to get the other part of the, when we first realized something was going on with the sigil in the first place, and he says William Kaplan and then he says Billy Maximoff. Like he he knows he's working, but he's got to solve the puzzle. He's got to play detective. He's got to get to that point. So this was just all like very, very interesting on the what is actually happening with the mythology front. I liked that a lot. I also loved how he said something else, something more. This is like his Oliver Queen moment, you know? This was fantastic.
I love it. When Billy says he's not William Kaplan and then he says, quote, not entirely. That was the moment where I was like, is there some William Kaplan still inside of him there?
Yeah.
Our listener Phil wrote in a lovely long email where he's talking about how for Phil, Billy's Jewish identity in the comics was like quite important to him and he doesn't want like to erase that. So of course we're celebrating it here with Bar Mitzvah, but like unlike Billy in the comics who was raised as Billy Kaplan, this is like a Billy who was just sort of like inserted into Billy Kaplan's life. And so what Phil wrote is he says, for me, it's important that the characters, both Billy Kaplan, son of Jeff and Rebecca Kaplan, as well as the reincarnation of Wanda's magically created kid. It's also important to remember that the Kaplans are one of the vanishingly rare examples of loving, unproblematic parents in the Marvel Universe, something that has been faithfully depicted in this show. So this idea of like erasing these parts of the Billy Kaplan comic book character for the simplicity of the version of the story that they're telling here is something just to think about, I think. So,
you know, on that front, like that's really interesting. I'm now thinking again about that farewell between Wanda and Vision and the boys. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that Wanda said that was just so gut-wrenching was, thanks for choosing me to be your mom. And I like the idea that Billy can still choose them. Mm-hmm. You know, he can still choose and there's Rebecca and Jeff at the end of this. Like, and that would be beautiful.
There's no indication in another version of the story, Jeff and Rebecca would know something was wrong, would feel distant from him. Yeah. But there's no indication of that, right? Jeff's making pot roast for Eddie. Rebecca's like, should we have one of our regular movie nights? You know what I mean? Like, it's just sort of like, we're still a happy family unit. For Billy, it's torturous to a certain degree, right? He says to Eddie, nothing in my life has felt normal until I met you. But Eddie believing in him, right away, like has questions, but is sort of on board for this, is extremely charming. And with
wonderful.
All the love and respect in the world to Billy's canonical comic book boyfriend, who we will probably get at some point. Mm-hmm. I am personally right now very much Team Eddie.
Team Eddie.
I don't. I reject anyone other than Eddie in Billy's life right now. So
Eddie sounds so much like Teddy. It's like, again, it just feels very purposeful.
Yeah, the comic book character is Teddy, so this is Eddie, Teddy. They're pretty close. But I don't think, spoilers for the comics if you care, Teddy is Hulkling. I don't think that Eddie is Hulkling. That's what I would say. Like, he's just a guy, I think, right? So
just a guy.
Just a guy with good arms. So, you know.
You've got to put those arms away.
Put those arms away,
Wonderful.
Eddie, because
Great
Billy
stuff.
has compiled a dossier. We get the Jen cameo, and the Redditors and conspiracy theorizers get a shout out, and I love that from Jack and Co. We'll come back to the online conspiracy theory havers. And then we head into what I already wrote in the doc before Mallory said this in her introduction, one of the most important scenes in all of television history.
This was just sensational. I gasped aloud when he turned around and I realized what was happening. But even before that, just like on the loving Eddie, instantly loving Eddie front, we couldn't have met him somewhere with lights,
more coffee,
or people, or more coffee. Like,
oh yeah,
it's delightful.
Eddie is quite Mallory coded. Not the more people part.
Not the more people part.
But the more coffee part. For sure.
More coffee. Yeah, it's like a no, and a yes for me.
Dark
on that checklist.
Isolated, caffeinated. The Mallory Rubin story. Okay.
Yes.
Calling this when Craft Crazy 17 met Bonerific 69. We're very all the.
We must be Bonerific 69. It was just. I can't believe this was a real thing that happened. I just can't believe this was a real thing that happened.
The fact that they got away with this, the Boner family reunion pitch tent.
Holy shit.
Shirt. Incredible.
Also, I mean, who better to play the role of Deep Throat than
Ralph
Mr.
Boner.
Bonerific.
So yeah, we're doing all
boy.
President's Men in the parking garage. The comp that I was thinking of, we're definitely doing all the President's Men, but in terms of like the bucket hat with the like bone cross on it and like all the various things and the rambling, this is a horror movie archetype of like the old coot who knows the lore of whatever horror movie you're in. There is literally a character in Friday the 13th called Crazy Ralph who has a bucket hat. Like it's I think that's the exact sort of analog we're going for here, but it's an archetype that you see in a bunch of different horror movies.
You didn't think, oh, he's wearing Damien Dark Blood's outfit from Invincible. Oh, that makes me think of demons. Oh, that makes me think of Mephisto.
Is that where you went?
No.
A friend was texting me. He figured it out as soon as Billy said someone survived the hex. My brain started going like, okay, which town, like, which town person are we going to go see?
I was like, is it her? Is it her?
Who are we going to talk to? And then it was just like, right when they got into the garage, I was like, what if it's Ralph Boner? And it was, but it took me a little bit to get there, but I was so excited. Yeah.
It's fantastic stuff. Fantastic stuff.
I have, in our notes, we usually pull out choice quotes. I simply put the entire scene in the notes there. And then I did highlight and underline some moments. Yes. Call Me Randall. Great stuff from Randy Boner.
Randy Boner. I was going to say I won't be calling him Randall, but Randy Boner
Randy
works.
Boner, right?
Yeah, Randy Boner. Boy, Randy Boner works. Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
He says, you want to hear this or not, bub? And if you say bub, I have to think about Wolverine. And, that's just another fun Evan Peters moment for us.
Amazing stuff. Also, just this initial part here, because a lot of this is going to be about him talking about Agatha. Yes. But this initial stretch here of talking about Wanda and what Wanda did to Westview, it was interesting to think about, like, as Billy is moving toward, this is who I am. Yeah. I'm Billy Maximoff. Playing this all back and having to confront what his mom did to this town.
Which has to make us think of that scene with Jen when she was talking about who would want to be the kid of Agatha Harkness. And we were thinking about, is Billy thinking about Wanda in that moment? I know what they say about her, right?
Yes.
Is what he said to Jen in the Big Little Lies house. When Ralph Boner says, you mean like wake up every hour in the middle of the night screaming?
Oh my God. Horrible. It was really funny, but it's horrible.
Evan Peters is phenomenal in this scene. He's so good.
So
Give him
good.
another Emmy.
Please.
So we heard the clip at the beginning, which includes...
Does this count as a Mayor of Easttown reunion, given that Agnes is back in mayor mode for part of this episode?
If you need it to be, it can. I wanted to make sure the clip we hear at the beginning included the phrase, wait, Mr. Bonerific, because I don't know how Joe Locke said that with a straight face.
It's astonishing.
She stole my house, completely ruined the market value.
This is my favorite line of the episode. This was Pantheon stuff.
We get a mention of... completely ruined the market value. We get... a sword used Vision for Parts reference, and we'll get another one. So I would just like to thank them for reminding us that a Vision series will be upcoming on Disney Plus. Thanks for those reminders. Where is Vision?
Indeed. That, by the way, that also, like, I was her puppet, just like what I was just saying about Wanda. It's like a lot of this series has really warmed us toward Agatha, and this also is a reminder of what she did.
Yeah. Left my entire Blu-ray collection behind.
Not the physical media.
Agatha can keep my Bowflex. When I was rewatching the episodes, I noticed that, well, it's in this episode too, when Billy goes into the closet, when he's duct taped and put in the closet in Ralph's house, the Blu-rays are stacked on the chair behind him. And it's just like, I, again, did not have the ability to enhance to find out what Ralph Boner's letterbox top 4 was. But,
exactly. Let's put fantasy on it.
I want to know. Okay. Or you'll end up buried in that yard with that dog, or worse. It's very much like I'll get you and your little dog too, which is an illusion we had in WandaVision as well. Eddie flashing his abs on the wire question. Nice. Great job, Eddie. Good work on your arms. Good work on your abs. Good job. Okay. And then I can give you half off tickets to my one-man show in Paramus. I really need to fill seats.
Unbelievable.
Disney, give us the Ralph Boner or Randy Boner if you prefer one-man show. I demand it immediately. I need to see it.
I mean, also Paramus. This is one of the fake, I'm from here, Steve Rogers filling out my enlistment form locations, right? So that's delightful.
I love it.
The way that William's face changed into like the talking about the kids.
The little speedster.
Wanda and Vision have kids, had past tense twins. What were their names? Billy and Tommy. Tommy, the little speedster, and his mind-reading brother. Obviously, he's like, Tommy, it's pinging something. He's probably remembering shouting Tommy. We hear later him say that he can sense Tommy. But just also, this made me think so much of The Stranger and Nori. And I'll, I won't say too much, obviously, about where this ends up. But like in the beginning of season 2, that conversation, don't you see? No one can give you a name. It's yours already. It is who you are. And when you hear it spoken, you feel your heart glow. Like that, it felt like this was Billy's moment. He hears his name and he knows and something just clicks. I loved that.
It's funny. Anytime, I don't know that I mentioned this when we were covering Rings of Power, but I just need you to know that anytime someone like says something about their name or whatever, in my head, I hear Daniel Day-Lewis in The Crucible saying, because it is my name, because I cannot have another in my life.
Wonderful.
Crucible, of course, a very famous witch trial thing. But yeah, because it is my name. Dan Day-Lewis, what a legend. Okay, good actor.
My favorite.
That's a stance I'm willing to take here on this podcast.
Brave.
Dan Day-Lewis, talented. Yeah. Okay. Speaking of talented, just want to shout out the fact that Agatha, yes, has been living in Ralph's house, Bowflex and Blu-ray and all, but also, and I didn't fully notice this, wearing his clothing. She's been styling out these oversized men's clothing this whole time and looked,
same.
Presumably not the coat. Presumably that was not Ralph's coat, but once you see her without the coat, covered in mud, in just a large button down tucked into 2 large pants, you realize that she is wearing Ralph's clothing still. So
great observation.
I mean, the Boner family reunion, obviously.
Here's my question. When will this be available for us to purchase, and why is the answer not yesterday?
I agree. And my question is Disney going to be brave, or are they going to be cowards and not give us a Boner family reunion shirt?
Failing to make this shirt would be an all-time miss.
There's already knockoffs online, and some people have sent me links, but I'm like, I want the real deal.
Yeah, well, we made this mistake when we waited for the TVA guidebook.
I'm having terrible memories. As I mentioned, the costume designer for Agatha All Along is on Instagram putting up notes, and he put up immediately the Boner family reunion t-shirt pitch a tent thing, and he said basically it was Catherine Hahn's question, what clothing would she be wearing? And we decided she'd be wearing Ralph's clothing. And then we decided to do a Boner family reunion shirt. And then the writers pitched us a bunch of jokes, and we were very surprised that this one made it, but it did. So there you go.
Oh my God.
I love it so much. We already talked about what this means in terms of Jack Schaefer beating the Boner allegations. So good. But
yep.
Jeff Kaplan loving Eddie so much that he made him his favorite pot roast and crispy potatoes in the air fryer. My question to you is, which appliance do you think Jeff Kaplan loves more, his sous vide or his air fryer?
Oh, why not both? I do, as you know, am very inclined toward a Postmates or DoorDash order, and not really much of a home chef. Yeah. However, even I know that it's hard to get by these days without an air fryer. So I feel like that's probably got to edge out the sous vide.
It's got more practical applications.
It does, I think, certainly. This sounds delicious, by the way. A pot roast and then crispy potatoes in the air fryer with a movie night after. freaky but grounded. My God,
Psychological horror.
are the Kaplans inviting people over?
You wouldn't watch psychological horror, freaky but grounded. You wouldn't do that. You would eat the pot roast and you would leave. You would be like,
maybe.
Thanks for your Midge Maisel level of pot roast. I loved it. I gotta go.
Man. I just loved it. I love them. I love
again with very little screen time. Well cast.
Yeah,
really.
it's just right because something like that, like the disappointment that Eddie's not there because they were excited to see him. They love and support their son, and they love and support the way that he lives his life. Like this is beautiful. This was great.
Billy, Maximoff, come on, House of R.
Please. Yeah.
We go to Billy's room, which is just covered again. We still have posters up. The Wizard of Oz has survived the transformation. We have Easter eggs everywhere of things that show up on the road. But we have like a sigil murder wall, essentially, where he has just assembled everything he could ever get his little hands on about sigils on the wall. And we get 2 notes. There's one called permanent sigils and there's one called destructible sigils. Yeah. So under permanent sigils, it says active for long periods of time. Sigils can be made into art pieces or hidden in other objects, can be recharged to strengthen, revitalize the active energy. And then you have destructible sigils, activated by being destroyed, creates a burst of energy that gives the sigil power. Write, carve, or singe sigil into paper, wood, food, or object and destroy by fire or force.
Food.
Anything you want to say about permanent sigils versus destructible sigils here?
I loved seeing Billy put in the work.
And the production design team put in the work.
Yeah. I mean, it's you said he's invited on House of R. It's real Elrond according to lore.
Don't burn the scrolls. Okay.
I absolutely loved this. This was wonderful. I mean, this is a treasure trove.
Oh, so good.
Parsing the room. And it feels like the kind of thing, too, we'll be able to like go back to these scenes after the season is complete and find little new treasures to uncover, which I always love. Delightful.
I was reminded of in Doctor Who.
Yeah. Yes.
If you did the watch with us that we did last year, or if you have enjoyed time with Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor, you'll remember that when Rose Tyler, just a common shop girl, meets a Time Lord, an ageless Time Lord, she Googles him. There's some Googling that happens, and we get some of this like very similar thing of like, through time, these people in these online conspiracy boards tracking this Time Lord and how he's shown up again and again and again in moments of crisis. What I like about this is like in moments of crisis, the Doctor shows up on Doctor Who to save the day.
Right.
In moments of crisis, I don't know that Agatha shows up
like
to save the day.
Agatha's responsible for the Titanic and the Hindenburg.
Or follow-up theory. Does she just hang around where a lot of people died because she's dating death?
Oh, wow.
She just went, take your girlfriend to work day.
Nothing more romantic than a trip to the Titanic. I mean, there are jewels floating around, actually.
Jack and Rose found it quite romantic.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. My goodness. I wonder if, they've ever sketched each other in the nude. I'm into this. I thought this was a great scene. I have one note.
Yeah.
It's not for the people who make the show. It is for young Billy Maximoff. We need to work on your internet security practices.
Tell me.
Just way too haphazard with the clicking of the links. What sort of malware is on young teens' computer?
Is this where I tell you that I fail most of the tests that we get from Spotify cybersecurity?
I honestly had heart palpitations watching this. I'm like, don't click that link. You don't know where that's taking you.
Yeah, stay vigilant, kids, and also me. Okay, B of the East, Bitch of the East is my favorite Scream name of all the Scream names that we see here. Finding out that Agatha is the real Jolene. Last seen in Nashville, Tennessee, 1973. Incredible. And then we go to brujapedia.com, which is just absolutely fantastic. And I regret to inform you that I was not able to crack every code that I wanted to. And so once again, I asked for help for the bad babies, because in the list of A's, before we get to Agatha Harkness, we get a number of names. We get Abigail Adams, famous first lady. Love to imagine that she's a witch. That sounds great. We get Agatha Harkness, but we get these other names that I could not find, though it's possible that AJ Kerner is a baseball player, but I could not find analogs for. And I wonder if they're anagrams. but they weren't anagrams of like people. I was like, oh, is it Jack Schaefer scrambled around or something like that? I couldn't
Right. Yeah,
or like Kevin Feige or something like
Are
that.
any of them Mephisto?
No, but these have to be. These are such anagram names.
Yeah.
Ariel Franks, Addie Denson, and AJ
Addie
Carter.
Addie Denson is
Daddy Ensign? I don't know. So if you have a better anagram brain than I do, hobbitsanddragons@gmail.com. And let us all aspire to the fun fact section that is on Agatha's page here. Murdered her entire coven, possesses succubus powers.
Yeah.
Nickname is Witch Killer.
It's tough. Yeah.
Only known survivor of the Witch's Road.
Sick flex.
Great stuff. Anything else you want to say about this research section?
So I guess the only other thing would be when Billy is writing in his notebook, Wanda Maximoff, dead. Vision, dismantled. So sorry, I shouldn't laugh. Dismantled. Tommy Maximoff, missing. Billy Maximoff, dash. Okay. The lyric from the Ballad of the Witches, dismantled stuff. As we like hover over Billy Maximoff, dash, because he's listening to Lorna Wu's version of the Ballad of the Witches, or the lyric we get paired with that is the spell is cast. How long it lasts, I cannot divine. So I like that like pairing of his name with the idea of like this is like the time in the series where the sigil is the hex and the sigil and all of it.
Wow.
Like, done.
Love it.
Yeah.
On the Witch's Road, allegedly you can find what's missing, and then we get Tommy Maximoff missing.
Okay, so like what is your new theory? I mean, I guess we can save this actually for the ensuing conversation about Sweet Toby.
Yeah.
But do you think Tommy is like stinger of the show, more Young Avengers setup? Do you think he's coming in sooner? Do you think we're not going to get him in the series because there's no empty spaces in the credits, or for any other reason? Like, what do you think?
There's a possibility we don't see him until we get the Vision show, and that's when we get the whole family back together. You know what I mean? Or we get him in the finale. But if they've cast him, they've done a tremendous job keeping that wholly under wraps because we have no clue at all. Though we also did not expect a midweek bonering, so here we are. You know,
you never expect a midweek bonering when you get one that's a delight.
Okay, let's go back to Westview. And the second most delightful sequence in this episode after post bonering, which is we get a lot of the Mayor of Easttown stuff from Billy's point of view, and it is genuinely like so funny. We get
during, I hate to kick a show while it's not been renewed for season 2, but like this, I was thinking about Acolyte watching this because we were so like, if you're gonna go back to the same events, like you gotta nail it, and like this is an example of how it can really be satisfying and good. I quite enjoyed this, the new perspective, what it tells us about each of them, what it tells us about Agatha, right? What's missing here that was part of her illusion. Obviously there's a little bit of an homage, I think, to The Affair in terms of different perspective. Okay. You know, same moments.
You're like Rashomon The Affair. Who's to say what we're going for here?
The couple
equally important in the canon. Okay. We get a bit more inside of Teen's heavily annotated spell book, which is called, I could only get part of the title, which is The Witch's Pocketbook. TK. I don't know. It cuts off on my frame, so I could not get the full title of it. As he reviews the release spell, it mentions that you need a personal item from the bound, and it appears per an Instagram post from the costume designer on the show that, you know, encircling where the various amulets showed up on the costumes inside of the 80s horror episode. He circled Billy's fanny pack, which was like the holster that the book was in, has now become a fanny pack, and that's his amulet. So my question is it the holster itself? Is it the book inside the holster? And if the book is his like amulet personal item, what does it mean that it's missing? Who has it, and who can use it, and will they use it to unbind him from his own spell one way or another? Question mark.
I mean, well, my worry, this is an interesting prompt that you've tossed out. My worry would be like, well, who it fell on off when he was on the broom.
Salem 7.
Who was pursuing them? The Salem 7. That feels not great.
Yeah.
Much like a split lifeline. It's like, that feels not great.
I need them to like Accio the book. Did I use that correctly? They need to summon the book.
Yeah.
Because you can't really backtrack on the witch's row, but I need him to, get some of that blue juice flowing and summon the book off the road so it's not vulnerable to other people.
Oh, man.
Then we get this big moment, this text message from Eddie and a new black heart emoji clue, right?
Again, everything's all on purpose.
It's all coming together.
Yeah.
Is Billy, in fact, the black heart? Yes. Billy is the black heart that Lilia scrawled down when writing out the coven, right? He is the last member of the coven. And I like this idea that she had to do a black heart. Well, your pen is black. That she had to do a heart because he was sigilled.
Couldn't say his
She
name.
couldn't say his name.
Yeah. That I love. It does make me again worried about the Rio reaping part though, because we also have the Black Heart association with Rio.
Yes.
It's black and it beats for you.
I'm endlessly worried about the Rio reaping part. There is a terrible theory going around that Eddie is actually Rio in disguise. Hate it, reject it, do not like it. Let's move on. Okay. But speaking of Rio, we do not see her. As you mentioned, we don't see her in what I am calling the Rolling Rock scene, even though they weren't drinking Rolling Rock, but they should have been.
Yeah. There's some mugs here.
Yeah, they're
interesting.
two mugs. But in the Mayor of Easttown version of this scene, they're drinking beers and they're having this conversation.
Dos Equis,
Is Agatha talking to herself? Or what would death look like outside of the spell? I mean, we know that Teen saw her when she broke into the house because later on the road, he's like, the scary charismatic lady is back, right?
Exactly.
So like, we know he saw her in her black hood ensemble, but why is she missing from the shot in this point of view?
Yeah.
Is my
I guess, I don't know. Would it be something about, I don't know how she appears to each of them?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fascinating.
And then we get the interrogation scene from his point of view. And this is just genuinely so funny. And Joe Locke did such a good job as like him being like amused and playing along. The pen bit absolutely killed me.
Loved.
The kick, incredible. The accent sort of swirling in and out of.
Yeah. Poke the bear, also very charming and good. I don't want to poke the bear, but the pen bit was amazing.
Yeah.
Genuinely
there
amazing.
You got it. There you go. Now you got it.
It's not going to work.
No.
Not going to work.
He says, no, I don't want to go back in the closet. This is apparently a Joe Locke improvised line. And that's it. Now we go back to the road. Anything else you want to say before we go back to the road?
I think especially because of where we end the episode.
Yeah.
I'm not that nice of a person. I don't need you for the rest of this journey. Like all of this, what we talked about a lot at the end of last week, like the question of who deserves what and the real like venom that he directed toward Agatha after what happened with Alice.
Venom 3 coming to theaters.
Venom, The Last Dance. Tune in for like 8 hours of podcasts on this important film.
Yeah.
It felt important to see that he was sincere in his intentions here and in his initial like let's team up, right? Even just the way he's like when he falls during the chase, that was also really funny. Like the pursuit the first time around, it's like he's like, oh, so no, it's just like they both kind of just like
he ran into Sharon's door.
It's great. And he's like, I can't have a criminal record. But the way that he's like, I want to fully explain myself to you. And, I want to work with you, Detective Agatha. And it felt just, again, this is right on the precipice of this real rupture that we're going to assess between them. And so it felt like remembering that the belief that Agatha could be a partner was actually there.
I love it. Agatha drags herself out of
unbelievable
the fire swamp, the Riches Road, Goop, the swamp of sadness, whatever your pop cultural reference you want. It made me think of Wesley and Buttercup dragging themselves out of the lightning stand in The Princess Bride, but also the way she's just like smeared in mud did make me think of Atreyu, the Never-Ending Story. So there's all kinds of
absolutely
pop culture references for people who grew up in the 80s here. But Billy crushes the sigil. This idea that like sigil no longer necessary.
No longer needed.
No longer necessary. He says that he's not interested in power and she does not believe him. And as we mentioned a couple times in this episode, it really feels like these two, Coven of Two, which Agatha sort of previewed for us, this Coven of Two are headed towards a showdown where they have to trust each other. He says, I will never trust you. And she's obviously like, I think you're just here for power. And he's like, I think you're just here for my power, probably, you know, or like all the other witches who are here. I watch you drain Alice. Like, I don't trust you. I never will.
Yeah.
We only have 3 episodes left, but it really feels like that's where this is headed, that this is their trial. Can they trust each other?
Do you think that it's just going to be the two of them or the two of them in Rio for how long?
No, I mean,
neither of them seems to think that Lilia or Jen is going to return the way that Agatha just did.
I don't know how to answer this without trailer spoilers. So, yeah. Though I will say something that Jack Schaefer said that troubled me slightly. Is she was talking about Aubrey Plaza and how Aubrey Plaza is so incredible, but it is such an incredible like jolt in the arm that has to be used sparingly. And I was like, no. So,
Does it? What if we drenched and soaked ourselves in it like that mud? Just coated ourselves in it.
Get it in your pores. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we're definitely going to see Rio again, but it could just be in the finale. Like, I don't know. They they kind of forgot about Rio. Conveniently, right? We think we know what she's doing, but like, they think Jen and Lilia have either drowned in the mud or not. They think Alice is dead. We don't think she's dead. I don't think she's dead. And and they just don't bother about Rio, I guess.
Yeah.
But I mean, my question. Okay, so like, as we mentioned last week, Agatha's face when no one is looking is the most important thing to track. And so she's doing a lot of posturing. We're going to hear a classic, like, bravado Agatha filled with little digs and jokes sort of speech from her in a second. But when he turns his back on her and she says, nice to see you again.
Yeah.
She is genuinely like gutted and emotional and vulnerable and open. And she tears up when she says Billy, right? Like, so for whatever else we're going to see her perform in a second, there is a genuine emotional connection between her and that child who she knew for, I don't remember, was it like 48 hours in the Hex? I don't remember how long they were in there. And also thinking about her own son, but like, you know, all of that's in the mix. Yeah.
Yeah. We won't forget about Rio or Nikki. They're coming back into play. Definitely.
Every witch with a beating heart can hear you now. Scary. I'm scared for Billy in terms of, and like, I think this is part of it too. Like, is death coming for Billy, or are other witches coming for Billy and his power? And how much of this is Agatha trying to shield him from death?
Okay, so let me ask you a question that will sound sort of stupid.
Never. I don't know if you remembered, but I just made a huge Harry Potter blender and you were so nice about it. So thanks. Literally writing a book about it, but it's fine. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
How much does the fact that we're in the MCU impact how you feel about these things? When you say you're so worried for Billy, it's like, there's not an outcome of the show.
Okay, you're right.
Where Billy as Wiccan is not like
worried about him surviving, but I'm worried that he is going to be under threat. You're right that I'm not worried about Wiccan making it out of the show alive or not.
So we're like, it's just like and they know, but I
what's
think
going to have to be
sacrificed
to protect him?
Yeah. So like, does that ever feel like an inhibition or something that like it can cap our ability to like fully lose ourselves in the stories that we're watching? I say this is absolute Marvel obsessive, obviously, but like, you know,
but there's so many people
Billy's
who don't
gonna make
know,
it out.
There's so many people who don't know that.
Right.
I would say the majority.
Right. Not everyone's like building the Young Avengers roster in their
not everyone
minds
is
for the
listening
last
to 3 hours of
half a
House of
decade.
R, like,
Yeah.
so there's, I
Yeah.
would say majority of people don't know that.
Right. I think what it's doing for me, if anything, is actually heightening my fear for Agatha.
Yes.
Because, right, it's like, I'm like, well, I feel like Billy's gotta make it out, but like Agatha doesn't.
If Agatha,
and that would be very upsetting, but Agatha does not have to make it out of this show. We need Catherine Hahn in our lives, but like.
Hold this as loosely as you like.
Mm-hmm.
If Agatha sacrifices herself for Billy, which would heal perhaps the Nikki wound, would heal the Coven wound, would heal all these various things, would heal the Wanda, all of that. But is there a way in which being reaped by the love of your life, who is a hot lady named Death, is not actually that bad at the end of the day?
To the well-organized mind, I already made this joke.
All right, let's listen to to your point of we need Catherine Hahn in our lives. Let's listen to this absolutely phenomenal bit from Catherine Hahn.
What does Billy Maximoff want at the end of the road? Big magic is already in the bag. Huh. Is it find Mama? No. She chose a town full of strangers over her own flesh and wires. What about Robo-Papa? Lord knows where he is or in how many pieces. So who is left? Oh, right! There's 2 of you! You're after Toby!
Tommy.
That's what I said.
He's out there somewhere. I can sense him, I just can't find him.
Stunning work.
Toby absolutely fucking killed
Stunning
me.
work
Killed
from the
me.
writer's room. Flesh and Wires really killed me. Who knows where he is or in how many pieces really killed me. But also her delivery is just extraordinary.
Exquisite
Okay.
stuff.
So we're left with Coven 2.
Mm-hmm.
Not Coven True, but Coven 2.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the last exchange, which you already teased, which is last one, there is a nice person, and Billy says, I'm not that nice.
Yep. Yeah. Boy, this is a rich stretch here of setting up the final few episodes. Like,
I'm so excited. I think they're gonna do it. I really think they're gonna do it.
Yeah, I'm quite confident that they're gonna finish strong. There's just actually no reason to doubt that based on what we've seen so far.
Do you think in terms of like embracing things that maybe like didn't work or whatever, do you remember at the end how like the end of WandaVision was supposed to end with like a giant version of Senor Scratchy, a big like giant demonic rabbit?
Oh yeah.
Do you think they're gonna be like, do you think Jack's like, I hope so. I want my giant demonic rabbit?
Yeah. Okay. We'll I mean, I hope so. That would be wonderful. This was great.
Yeah.
This was just great. Where have I heard that before? That Wanda tie, like you broke the rules. What rules? What does it mean? Where's it going? Very, very worrying. All of it. And we played that clip earlier. That beautiful, like, that's what kept you alive. Yeah. That's what makes you special moment.
Yeah.
To me, this is like the magic of the show in a little snippet there, because I found it, as you did, incredibly moving and like a thing that just pulled me into this bond that has built between them, even if they're in a place of like rejecting it a little bit right here, or Billy is. But it's also still like, that's the logic that Agatha uses to justify the horrible things that she's done to herself and the world.
True. So true. And also just like thinking of her as someone who like, her mom and her coven tried to kill her. And this is what she felt she had to do to survive. Right. So survival at all costs, which is why we think maybe not survival at the end of the show. Maybe. Yeah. Again,
I hope we have Catherine Hahn and as Agatha in our lives forever, but I'm bracing for a different outcome. I love too just this idea of they're setting off, everyone's in a funk, and heading down the road pouting is like such an interesting mind state to be in. And like, I love the idea of Agatha as reluctant teacher and Billy now as the shift from super eager, precocious pursuer to reluctant student. Like, he doesn't want her there. And so they each have to work back toward
Fellowship?
this thing and this, fellowship. And I mean, Toby at the end.
Toby. All right, I want to end with a listener email that takes us back into Musical Corner, but there's a little nugget here for you. So the Stephen Sondheim musical Into the Woods, which I have cited a couple times, the ending line pinged for me and it pinged for our listener Leah as well. She says, last one there is a nice person, and he says, I'm not that nice, right? That idea of nice versus good is this constant thread throughout Into the Woods. I referenced this song that the witch has in Into the Woods right before, spoilers, she dies, called The Last Midnight, where she's like, she says to other people in the story, you're so nice. You're not good, you're not bad, you're just nice. I'm not good, I'm not bad, I'm just right. I'm the witch, you're the world. That's this idea of nice versus good. And then in Little Red Riding Hood, who's a character in this musical as well, she has a lyric in the song I ill-advisedly sang at a talent show. Nice is different than good. The big bad wolf that she meets is nice to her, but he's not good. And so this is what Leah writes. The idea there is that the wolf was nice, but ultimately bad, and it works in reverse as well. Agatha and Billy might not be nice, but that doesn't mean they can't be good. Mean, rude, unlikable people can still be good, and that's more important.
Is this where you said we were coming back to Snape?
Yep. We who love a problematic fave and a character on an arc know that better than most. That lyric was, if I can lure Mallory back in, my number one defense of Snape back in the pre-Deathly Hallow days when is Snape good was the debate. And what do you know? I was right. Also, is Agatha and Billy's confrontation about moral superiority the closest we're going to get to referencing my favorite dialogue exchange in Into the Woods between the witch and Little Red? When the witch says to Little Red, since when are you so squeamish? How many wolves have you carved up? And Little Red says, a wolf's not the same. And the witch says, ask a wolf's mother. I cannot wait to get to the Lilia witch stereotype trial next week, as the concept of goodness and niceness is clearly so top of mind for the show and so many witch stories. The musical Wicked touches on niceness a little bit, but has so much fun exhausting every possible use of the word good and goodness. Good news, good will conquer evil, goodness knows, making good, out of the goodness of my heart, I'll be back for good, blah, blah, blah. I've Been Changed for Good is my favorite song from Wicked. I've Been Changed for Good. So this idea of nice versus good, of Agatha saying, I can be good, but she's never going to be nice.
Right.
And that this idea, I don't want to pick on Jen, because I think Jen has definitely has reasons for distrusting Agatha. But in the context of just, let's say, last week alone, I would say Jen is nice but not good. And Agatha is good but not nice in that isolated incident. Again, Jen has a lot of history, and I don't begrudge her skittishness around Agatha. Anything you want to say about this, about Snape, about anything else when it comes to this?
I want to go read The Prince's Tale right now. My goodness. No, I think that's a beautiful email, and I think a great framing, and I think one that the show is clearly interested in, especially because so much of this is about what other people think of you, and how that then causes you to either recede or lean into some aspect of the perception of who you are. And then that thing that you project out to other people, that doesn't necessarily reflect your nature. Maybe it's actually an active response to what other people think your nature is, right? And at the end of the day, the truth of who you are isn't necessarily what you show other people or what you feel like you can show other people. So I really like that. And I think that idea of another through line thing that these characters share is really, really interesting. And I don't think that it would feel believable or authentic to the show or the character if the place we worked toward at the end of the road was Agatha
What a gemstone.
What a gem. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that
No.
wouldn't feel
But is Agatha
true.
capable of a sacrificial
can be
good
good.
act?
Then that would be very rewarding and satisfying to watch.
But
Yeah.
never nice. But maybe sometimes good. And I
Always funny though.
always
and well
fun. Well, and
dressed.
that's the thing is like leaning into that role. If you have cast me as the Wicked Witch, I'll play the shit out of that role and I'll be so good at it. And especially coming off of something like WandaVision, where we're talking about like the roles that we play and the stereotypes that we lean into, the nosy neighbor, whatever. The nosy neighbor, which is a detective archetype in and of itself. Okay, that does it for episode 6 of Agatha All Along. An episode of television we absolutely loved. Really excited for 7, 8, 9. Really sad that we only have 2 more weeks.
We get to do the episode 7 one together in person though. That's a treat.
See you in LA. Reminder, we only have 1 episode next week because of Ringer Core Week. What is Core Week? Don't worry about it. And we'll be back with our coverage of Venom, as will the Midnight Boys. Thank you as always to Steve Ahlman for his work on the soundboard, keeping the cause coming. Thank you, Steve. Thank you to Arjuna Ramgopal for his production work and booking a studio space next week and all the other things that Arjuna does that is so helpful to us. Thank you to Jomi Adeniran for his work on the social. Good luck clipping out Theory Corner this week. It was a long one. And thank you to Stefano Sanchez for the work on the video, and also to T. Cruz and to John Richter for all of their work on the video production. We appreciate you all so much, and we will see you next week. Bye.